Boomer Sooner, baby! This is Drop All the Bombs with another edition of Bombs Away. It would be the second for the season, the week that OU is off. But before we begin, we need another moment of silence for another great Boomer Sooner. Leroy Sell. May he rest in peace. He was one of the greatest Sooners of all time, no doubt about it. I actually got to see him play live a couple of times, and the guy was a monster, but he was also a good guy. And you know, he was Mr. Tampa Bay Buccaneer. He's a Hall of Famer. Anything you want to say about him, I think he deserves a statue. In fact, I think even the Boz deserves a statue. As much as, you know, you want to run him down. If you're going to give one to Leroy, you better give one to the Boz. Maybe we should give one to people who win that kind of an award. Derek Strait, he was one of my favorites, you know, the Thorpe Award winner and stuff. I realized that, you know, you would have statues everywhere, but that's the OU football tradition. So we might have to rethink about some of these guys that won, you know, these huge awards and so forth. I mean, not just the Heisman. So we'll discuss that later. So he's sorely missed, and it's, you know, it's sad for us Sooners, but he was, you know, applauded, and totally one of the greatest of all time. And the teams he was on was unbelievable, especially on the defensive end. Him and his brothers. So with that, let's get into it. It's an off week for OU. So since it's an off week, we're going to discuss a few other things I'd like to get off my chest. And the number one thing I'd like to get off my chest is this realignment business and about OU going to the Pac whatever. I'm going to just say this right now. Any conference that OU enters in that has a team like the Oregon Ducks in it, the biggest posers of all time, makes me sick to my stomach. I don't want any part of them. They're terrible. And let me tell you why. Not just the uniforms and Phil Knight and the whole deal. We all know what happened back in 2006 when OU had the game in hand and replay was a new thing, and everybody was like, replay will fix any mistakes on the field. Replay this, replay that. We know that that is a fraud. And what happened is this. Oregon kicked off, and the ball did not travel 10 yards before the Oregon player tipped it with his hand about after 8 yards. So he touched it first, and therefore right at that moment it should have been OU ball with a penalty. But instead, they let the play continue. There was this big dog pile. The refs jumped in there like they could see the ball, and they made the quickest call in history of any dog pile I've ever seen and said Oregon ball. We know as Sooners, though, that the ball was actually about 5 yards down the field, picked up by a Sooner. He's just standing there, and he just picked the ball up because it was obvious that no one in that pile had the ball. So, but the refs were adamant about it was Oregon ball, you know, all the way. And of course, that, you know, Chimichunga Changa-Ching, or whatever his name was, came out and said, "Oh yeah, I recovered that onside kick." But later, we saw the video of the ball just going straight through his hands and out, and he never had it the whole time. So we know he's a liar, but that's not why. Just because he's a liar is not why I can't stand Oregon. Bellotti, or whatever his name is, Cappuccino Head, whatever. He's a liar. You know, he tried to say it was a well-earned victory. Phil Knight tried to say it was a well-earned victory, but this is the truth. The truth is this. Old Gordo, the replay official, who basically, you know, should have retired completely, was in the replay booth that day. And so when the feed came from ABC to his booth, apparently he only got a still picture. For the first time in the whole game, they have had no problems with the video feed, but at this crucial moment in time, he gets a still picture instead of the video feed. Now ABC News came out, ABC Sports came out and said, hey, you know, we sent, everything was fine on our end. They should have got the feed. There was nothing wrong from them. Gordo said he only got a still picture. What people don't realize is in between ABC and old Gordo was a University of Oregon employee who had control of the feed to old Gordo. Because old Gordo didn't even know what buttons to push. He was clueless. It was shown to him, he looked at it, and that was it. This technician who was a University of Oregon employee, is the one that made sure that O'Gordo only got a still photo. And on the still photo, it looks like the ball is bouncing off of an OU helmet. And it was, I believe it was Trent Smith. And so O'Gordo made his ruling that the ball bounced off of the OU player. So therefore the OU player had to touch it first. Okay, now this is why this defies logic. Not just because that didn't happen, but if he was even, he's like he didn't even watch the play live or something, because that player that ball supposedly bounced off of was about 7 yards, 5 to 7 yards away from the ball. It just was an optical illusion. It looked like it bounced off his helmet because of where the angle was. So not only did he not pay attention to that, but two, if it bounced off his helmet and he's running like toward the ball, and this is the ball coming this way, you would think that the ball would either go back toward where they just kicked it from, or bounce some other wild angle. Instead of what happened, it looked like just a normal kick that got tipped and just kind of kept rolling forward as like in a normal play. So the fact is, he didn't even question that if that ball hit that dude's helmet and he's charging toward the ball, why did the ball just keep rolling forward normally? It should have like bounced some kind of crazy bounce if it actually bounced off the OU football helmet. So that alone was telling me, not that the fix was in with him, but with the technician. And so he was able to fool Gordo. And I feel for Gordo because I don't truly fault him completely because he had to rule on what he had been given, but I do fault him for not stepping back and going, how is this even possible that the ball bounced off a helmet and not somebody's hand when I just watched the play, and that didn't even make sense that the ball would do what it did, you know, after that. So he couldn't rule on who recovered the ball because he was never even shown the video further of anything. He never even saw the video of the ball rolling. He only saw the still photo. So, with that, now, that was bad. I mean, obviously it was horrible because if OU recovers the onside kick, it's game over. Yes, maybe Oregon had a couple timeouts. I think they had two. And it was like a minute 28, minute 31 left. OU would have had to run 2 plays, and then on the third play, they would have counted down. It would have been about 20 seconds or so. OU would have punted the ball. Could Oregon have won the game? Maybe, you know, once, like a Herm Edwards deal against the Giants or something. But more than likely, it was OU was going to seal the deal. Instead, Oregon gets this fake recovery, and they march down the field, but they didn't march totally untainted down the field. If you remember, there was a key play on a 3rd down where they passed the ball, and OU got called for pass interference. But the sad part about that was that OU actually made the proper play, because OU tipped the ball at the line of scrimmage, which therefore nullifies the pass interference call. And so by tipping the ball like that, OU should have not been getting the penalty in the 1st down to continue the drive. It should have been 3rd or 4th down, about 12, 13 yards to go. They would still had to make they still had a chance to win, but they'd have to make a play. Instead, they got a 1st down inside our 20, and then of course they scored on the next play. And you know, OU was so demoralized by then, it was pathetic. So, and this is what Gordo said. If you go back to what he said, this time he got the video feed, but he said that he couldn't imagine how the ball was tipped. And this was his mistake. And I'm not so sure the technician, I don't know what he saw in the booth, whether he was able to see what happened. But what happened was this. OU's left defensive end, I believe it was C.J. Ayu, was the left defensive end. And the pass was thrown over here to the left. And he was the left defensive end. So what Gordo said he watched was the right defensive end, the right tackle, the linebacker on that side, so if there was a blitzing linebacker. And since he didn't see any of those 3 players with their hands up, he couldn't imagine that anyone tipped the ball. But this is what happened. Our left defensive end saw where the play was going and literally, like, I don't know if he was stunning or what, but he ended up on this side of the formation, and he is the one that tipped the ball. And Gordo he couldn't imagine how our left defensive end could hustle so much to be on the other side to tip the pass. So he didn't think the pass could possibly have been tipped. Which makes you wonder, was he even watching the video? Because obviously us fans, we were sitting there watching, we could clearly see his hand tip it, and the ball changed, and you know, even the announcers, Dan Fouts, bless his soul, the old